The casket was white. It was small enough to hold a doll. For 5 years, I visited that casket every Sunday. I planted lilies. I wept until my throat bled. I didn't know that I was watering an empty box. I didn't know that while I was mourning a ghost, my daughter was 20 minutes away, eating cake in my sister-in-law's backyard. My name is Elena, and this is not a story about a medical tragedy. This is a story about a crime so cold, so calculated, that it makes me question if the people I loved were ever human at all. To understand the horror, you have to understand the birth. It wasn't a peaceful moment. It was a bloodbath. I was 40 weeks pregnant when I suffered a placental abruption. The pain was blinding. I remember being rushed into the OR. I remember the surgeon yelling, "She's hemorrhaging! Put her under! General anesthesia now!" The last thing I saw was the terrified face of my husband, David. The next thing I saw was darkness. I woke up 6 hours later in a recovery room. The silence was heavy. It pressed against my eardrums. David was there. His eyes were swollen shut. His sister, Carla, my best friend, the woman who had thrown my baby shower, was holding his hand. "Where is she?" I whispered. My stomach felt empty. "Wrong." David couldn't speak. He just shook his head. Carla stepped forward. Her voice was trembling but steady. "Elena." The abruption cut off her oxygen. She didn't make it. She was stillborn. I demanded to see her. I tried to rip the IVs out of my arm. "Bring me my daughter!" I screamed. David held me down. "Elena, stop. Please. You don't want to see her." "Why?" I sobbed. She was without oxygen for too long," David lied, tears streaming down his face. "She's blue. She's deformed from the trauma. The doctors advised a closed casket. They said the image would haunt you forever. Please, let's remember her perfectly. Don't look in the box." I was weak. I was on morphine. I was traumatized, and I trusted him. I trusted the man I slept next to. So I agreed. I let them bury a sealed white box without ever opening the lid. I let them steal my closure. The next 5 years were a slow suffocation. I fell into a deep depression. David was patient at first, then he became cruel. "You need to move on," he'd say. "Carla moved on. Look at her." Yes, Carla, the miracle. 3 days after I lost my Mia, Carla suddenly got a call from a private adoption agency, a frantic last-minute placement, a baby girl. She named her Lily. I couldn't be around Lily. It hurt too much. I missed her first steps. I missed her first words. I stayed away, locking myself in a shrine of a nursery that smelled like dust and dead dreams. But last week, the isolation ended. It was Lily's 5th birthday. David forced me to go. "If you don't come to your niece's party, Elena, I'm leaving you," he threatened. "You are obsessed with the dead. Focus on the living." So I went. The party was a blur of noise. I sat in the corner clutching a glass of wine. Then Lily ran over to me. She had scraped her knee. "Auntie Elena?" She sniffled, looking up at me. I knelt down to wipe her face. The sun was hitting her directly. And that's when the lie shattered. I froze. My hand stopped midair. I was staring into her eyes. Lily had deep blue eyes, but in her left eye there was a sharp, triangular slice of hazel brown at the bottom. Sectoral Heterochromia. It is an extremely rare genetic mutation. It affects less than 1% of the population. My grandmother had it. My mother had it. And I have it. I pulled out my phone and opened the selfie camera. I looked at my own eye. Then I looked at hers. It was identical. The same shape, the same shade of brown, the same position. The statistical probability of an adopted stranger having this specific mutation in the same eye is practically 0. I looked across the yard. David and Carla were talking by the grill. They looked relaxed, happy. And suddenly, every memory replayed in my head. The emergency C-section, the general anesthesia, the insistence on the closed casket, the last-minute adoption that happened the same week. They didn't adopt a stranger. David gave my baby to his infertile sister. He stole my daughter while I was unconscious on an operating table, and then he spent 5 years convincing me I was crazy for grieving her. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. A cold surgical calm took over. I needed proof. DNA-level proof. "Here, sweetie," I said to Lily, fixing her ponytail. "Let me fix your hair." I gently pulled a few strands of hair from her head, making sure the follicles were attached. I put them in a tissue and slid it into my pocket. The next 48 hours were a game of chess. I told David I was going to a spa. Instead, I went to a private forensic lab. I paid $3,000 for an emergency rush test. When the email came, I was sitting in my car outside the police station. Match probability, 99.9999%. Maternity confirmed. I didn't just go to the police, I went to the district attorney. I showed them the death certificate, which listed stillbirth signed by a doctor who, I discovered, was an old college friend of Carla's husband. I showed them the DNA test. "This is kidnapping," the detective said, his face pale, "and conspiracy, and fraud." We planned the takedown for Sunday dinner. I needed them to admit it. I needed to see their faces when the walls fell. I sat at the table. I ate their food. I listened to David talk about his golf game. Then, I spoke. "I visited the grave today," I said quietly. David sighed, rolling his eyes. "Elena, please. Not again." "It's interesting," I continued, staring at Carla. "I dug up the lilies, and I realized something. Flowers don't grow on empty boxes." David dropped his fork. "What are you talking about?" I reached into my purse and pulled out the DNA results. I slapped the paper onto the roast chicken. "Her name isn't Lily," I said, my voice rising to a roar. "Her name is Mia. She has my eyes. She has my DNA. And you two are going to prison for the rest of your miserable lives." Carla started screaming. "No, she's mine. I raised her. You were too weak." David tried to run. He actually stood up and sprinted for the back door. But the police were already in the kitchen. I watched 5 officers tackle my husband to the ground. I watched them handcuff Carla while she shrieked like a banshee. And then, amidst the chaos, a social worker brought Lily Mia into the room. She looked terrified. I knelt down. I didn't grab her. I just waited. She looked at me. She looked at my eye. She touched her own eye. "We match," she whispered. "Yes, baby," I choked out. "We match." David and Carla are currently being held without bail. The doctor who signed the fake death certificate has been arrested. The grave is being exhumed for evidence. They will find nothing but rocks and lies. I lost 5 years with my daughter. I can never get those back. But last night, for the first time in 5 years, the nursery wasn't silent. I heard her sleeping breath. And for the first time, I slept too. Trust your gut, even when the world tells you you're crazy, because the truth is in the details.